Okay, I'm waiting notification. And perfect. And we are live. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to a very special edition of Off the Record on the People's Podcast this afternoon. We have an incredible guest with us, one who is going to give us some information as well as some inspiration, and that is none other than a clinical mental health counselor, Miss Donita Lake. First of all, assalamu alaikum, ma'am. How are you doing?
Walaikum salam, dear brother Joshua. I am doing well. I am just honored to share this afternoon with you and discuss such a sensitive topic that needs to be talked about. So I appreciate you allowing me the platform to come on and share this information with you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And I thank everyone who is watching. Well, how did you first get into the mental health field?
Well, okay, so I think ultimately I've always been that person that my family has come to when they've had issues and concerns. My mother was a psychologist for the Chicago Board of Education. So that kind of set the tone for me, watching her counsel many people in our family as well as people within the community. So it started out, back in the day, helping my grandparents out with those brown bags during the civil rights movement, and then moving into the Black Power movement, and just seeing the empowerment of women just inspired me to such an extent. And I began my modeling career. And from my modeling career, of course, when the phone stops ringing, you got to ask yourself, so what do I do with all this knowledge and these skills? So I opened a career development center for talent, Christian Michael's Talent Career Center. And what I realized when I started trying to help people get into the entertainment industry, just providing them with the tools and training that they needed, that their mental health issues or just their life issues far exceeded their desire to pursue a career in the industry. So I began to give them advice, and that was just based on my own real world experiences. And I became a life coach. And from there, my mother just gave me some insight, and she says, well, you can't really, give people that type of advice without some type of credentials under your belt. So I knew I wanted to continue the career counseling for talent, actors, models, voice, and musical talent. So that's what propelled me to go back to school and study psychology and get my degrees in clinical mental health counseling.
Okay, excellent. And I want to thank everyone who was watching. My uncle, Minister Jamil, says assalamu alaikum. My sister Miriam, and Naima says peace. And thank everyone who was watching. I'm proud of you, Uncle Jamil, as well. My next question, ma'am, is how did your family and friends, how did they feel about you once you went into the mental health field?
So obviously, there was some mixed emotions around me going into mental health. People saw me as this image and, I'm this face and you should go into modeling and don't give up the career development center. So that was never my goal. My goal was always to position myself where I could counsel people in the entertainment industry. Well, life happens that Allah is the best of planners and had different plans for me. So I began to stretch out. And it was my family that actually dictated the direction of my career because of just all the things that were going on, whether we were dealing with a tragic car accident, grief and loss, or we were dealing with addiction or interpersonal relationship conflicts. I felt that my phone continued to ring, but there are some ethical considerations that I have to take into my thought processes when I'm counseling people in my family, because that's just a boundary that's very sensitive. And it's important that we don't always counsel people in our family because of that reason. So there were just variations of different mixed emotions about me going into mental health. My cousin is a psychologist. She graduated from Columbia in New York. And so she, has her PhD, and she was really encouraging to me. As a matter of fact, I still use her today as my supervisor. If I find that I'm coming across an area that I just can't figure out on my own, I'll reach out to her. So it's in the family. and so I was well received. I would say ultimately, overall, my family was very proud of me.
Okay, excellent. Well, as a mental health advocate myself and someone who sees the benefit in counseling, has experienced it, and also sees, our community struggling with it. What are some practical methods that we can do to help beat addiction?
Well, as you know, childhood trauma. Well, what I will say is that 7 out of 10 people who experience childhood trauma and abuse are more likely to resort to substance use and a means to self-soothe, to mask their emotions, and just to cope with the psychodynamics of what happened in their past so that they can, exist and function currently in their life. So if we could just come together, I think what Minister speaks of, this unity piece, is going to be so important for us to be able to tackle the mental health concerns among our people. We have to come together collaboratively as a people and stand on a united front in order to impact the change that is needed. From a socioeconomic standpoint, from the divide within our family that systemically was placed on us by the evils of society and these people in power back in the 70s. I mean, we know what the welfare system did to break down the family dynamic within the Black community. And what I'm seeing now is, fortunately, our younger generation, they're coming together and they're staying together. It starts at the ground roots, Brother Joshua. We have to come together as a family in order to tackle mental health and to begin to put measures in place and to build that foundation. We deal with the moral model of addiction, which is so important, because I think if we have a strong spiritual base and a strong moral base, then we can raise a child up how you want them to be, right? And so they shall be that way. At least that's our hope. So it starts with the family. However, we know that there are blended families and many mixed families. I myself have a foster grandmother. While I did know my biological grandmother, came from two different backgrounds. At my biological grandmother's home, that was the policy house and the gambling house and everything else that could possibly go on back in the day for families to be able to survive. And in my foster grandmother's home, I mean, she just praised Jesus all day. And my grandfather listened to the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So there was an eclectic variety of different cultural experiences that I had growing up, but each one of those had an impact on keeping me sound-minded in a lot of different ways. It takes a village. And so we're going to have to get to the grassroots and the brass knuckles of being intricate parts of our families' lives and raising our children up according to the teachings. I think that's the best way that we can tackle mental health issues within the Black community.
Okay, great. Yes, ma'am. And thank you for your honesty and transparency. And thank everyone who is watching the People's Podcast. Please continue to like, share, and subscribe. Now, could you tell us what it was like for you to meet the Most Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan?
My goodness. Wow. So that was one of the most significant days of my life. Actually, when I told you, I knew I should not have stood in that line because I was already in MDT class and I was really forging ahead to become a registered member of the Nation of Islam. But when they announced that those who wanted to shake minister's hand could, approach the rostrum, I got in that line. I did. And I stood in that line. And when I got to up to our dear beloved divine teacher, I was just enamored by him. Just his presence alone changed the trajectory of my life at that moment. So I was so inspired. I actually felt like I was touching the hand of Jesus. And he is the Jesus of my day. I mean, I am so honored to be alive at a time when such a man exists on the planet, where we can actually be in his midst and receive the word of God, Allah, directly from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I can never thank Allah enough for the impact that he's had on my life. And it's just been immeasurable nothing compares to it. So when I was actually able to touch his garment and be in his presence, and him to really be present with me, out of all of the people that were there and standing in line, he took time to talk to me and to give me insight and share his wisdom with me. He wasn't rushed. I didn't feel like I was infringing on his time. I could have stood there and literally just talked to him all day right there at the rostrum. But knowing that there were other people in line who wanted to also have that experience, I moved on. But I was so moved with emotion until Brother Ishmael actually came down to ask me if I was okay. And it was after Savior's Day. I get confused, but it was when he spoke of the late Muhammad Ali, and he talked about his life. And it was right after that message that I had an opportunity to meet the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And as I said, it was one of the most significant days of my life. And I can never thank Allah enough for just giving me the opportunity to embrace the teachings as I have, especially at this stage in my life, and to be able to really understand the teachings to gain accurate knowledge of self and Allah, and just be among such beautiful people with the believers. It's just an amazing feeling.
Great, wonderful. My sister Naima says all praises be to Allah, and thank everyone who's liking, sharing, and subscribing. Well, Mr. Newly Lake, I'm going to have a quick 60-second commercial break to thank all of the sponsors of the People's Podcast for this episode. We want to come back so that we can get some practical solutions to addiction, which is affecting many of us. And we want to get some guidance from a clinical mental health counselor. All right. If you all are watching and would like to be a sponsor or a donor of the People's Podcast, please Cash App the People's Podcast, $ the People's Podcast. My brother Rashad, Street Premier Media Production. He has a 4K camera, drone, and he does television and film editing. Thank you very much. My sister Miriam, ABC I Love Me, children's book and coloring book, both of which are available on Amazon. Make sure you go out and get those. My sister Naima, Stay On Point Dance Academy, LLC. She teaches ballet virtually to young girls all across the country, and she teaches locally in the studios in Atlanta. We love our tiny dancers. Our brothers out of the Los Angeles area, MTS Car Bros, any make, any model, any year, 30 to 50% off. Make sure you reach out to them, 30 to 50% off, MTS Car Bros. Brother Kenneth, bow tie maker extraordinaire. He'll ship bow ties to you all across the country. Thank you very much, Brother Kenneth. Sister Latasha, Queen is Eye, Poetry and Apparel. Make sure you get one of her shirts. I'm waiting for her to send me one of those shirts. Queen is Eye, Poetry and Apparel. So Latasha, make sure you reach out to her. Our brother Enoch out of Chicago, Hip Hop Detox. They are a public vehicle that empowers and approaches and assisting youth in a holistic approach to a healthy lifestyle. Let's make sure we continue to support Hip Hop Detox. They're saving lives in the inner cities and all across the country. Dr. Robert, he has a new book called Why Does My Back Hurt? And additional health tips and guidelines. Why Does My Back Hurt? Which is available on Amazon. Let's make sure we reach out to our brother, Dr. Robert. Any of us who are having pain, he does a great job with that. Thank you very much, Dr. Robert. Sister Kanika, CBD Moms Incorporated, self-infused care line. She has the cream, the oils. Make sure you reach out to Sister Kanika, CBD Moms Company. My Letter A book by Sister Landra El Muhammad. My Letter A book by Sister Landra El Muhammad. Make sure we go out and get that. We're coming right back to Miss Donita Lake. Dr. Henry M. Carter, King Henry's Turkey Legs, right here in Atlanta, Georgia. Make sure you get that. Brother Rashad Muhammad out of Chicago, COVID-19 Disinfecting Cleaning Services. My father's book, A Soldier in the Movement of Christ, AbdulSharif.com. And last but not least, my two books, Cleopatra, which is a children's book, and No Father, No Excuse, both of which are on Amazon. Right back to you, Miss Donita Lake. Now,
yes.
Thank you very much, beloved, for all your love. And next question for you, ma'am, is for those who are battling alcohol addiction. We'll start there, and then we'll come down to all the addictions. What is the best advice that you can give?
Well, alcohol is one of the most pervasive, addictive substances on the planet. So it's going to be really important that a person who suffers from alcohol addiction, that they get into a treatment program. So there are intensive outpatient programs, and then there are obviously residential treatment programs where they have inpatient. 12 steps are very important. Actually, you definitely want to have support. Group counseling definitely helps. But what's really important is that you get into a program and you have what's called a RAP. So a RAP is a wellness recovery action plan. So that's going to be consistent of your counseling, but it's also going to be consistent with accountability partners, people that are able to recognize when you're under the influence, people that know your behaviors and your addictive behaviors associated with substance use. And they're going to be able to look at you and tell that you're under the influence, and they're going to hold you accountable. And they're going to be the people that's going to not be critical, not be judgmental, but that's going to, help you through the process to maintain a certain level of abstinence. When we look at that, alcohol is, why is the person drinking? We want to get to the core issues here and look at the cause of the addiction. So is it because of a loss of a loved one? Is it because of poor self-esteem? Are we looking at mental health issues? There are a lot of co-occurring conditions that correlates to alcohol as well as other substance use. So we want to get to the core issues. Normally, we're looking at mental health issues like depression, anxiety, bipolar, because of the mania and the hypomania and the hypomania behaviors. So, depends on what is the person going through. Could be environmental factors, external factors, could be peer pressure, could, if we're dealing with adolescents, and it could be adults hanging around the wrong crowd, and being influenced by their peer groups. So we definitely want to look at all of these different domains and get to the root cause of the addiction. Some people are homeless. Some people can't find their way in life. They're not able to develop strong, healthy relationships. And so there are a lot of issues that relate to why a person uses substances, and alcohol is known to be a gateway drug. What we have found, Brother Joshua, it's not so much about achieving sobriety as it is making a connection. Most of the time, people lack that interpersonal belonging and sense of attachment to something that's more important than themselves. So if we can integrate as a family, as I said, come together as a family to support that person, by the time a person has gone through full-blown addiction, the family really doesn't want to be bothered with them. So that could be like me saying, let's get somebody that can be a reliable accountability partner involved in this process. Maybe that person doesn't have someone like that, that will support them. So there are other outside resources that they can seek out to get the support that they need. But it's very important, not only because of what it does to a person's lifestyle, but also their health. There are many health implications that, can result as a result of alcohol use. So we definitely want to get that person in a treatment program, and we want to get that person the support that they need. Most of the time, it's about drying out. It's about just going into a rehab center and going into recovery.
Excellent. Thank everyone watching. Thank you very much for this great advice. What about those who are dealing with substance abuse as far as drugs, pills, heroin, crack, weed, whatever it may be? What advice would you give to those people?
Well, I think from my experience in dealing with addiction, it's important that a person understands the cause of addiction, but also the symptoms of addiction and why addiction, why it's so difficult to stop the addiction. Because a person may have good intentions and they may really want to quit, but they can't because of the way the brain responds. So with addiction, obviously we know that when we drink or when we do anything and it brings us pleasure, what happens is we produce these hormones in our brain that tells us that felt really good, and I want to do it again and again and again. And so what happens is, in order to feel that level of euphoria, we have to increase the amount that we're using, or increase the activity that we're indulging in order to achieve that level of pleasure. And so once we stimulate the arousal cascade in the brain, prefrontal cortex, hippocampus, and the amygdala of the brain, then, I'm sorry, the nucleus and compass of the brain, then we're looking at all of these hormones being released, and they're being released at a higher rate than they normally would. But then what happens is, when we don't exercise or participate in the activity, our body doesn't release the hormones that's necessary to achieve that level of euphoria normally. So we go into bouts of depression. So I think once we explain the physiological effects and really able to identify how this is impacting the person, then we can move into more practical ways of helping them to address the addiction.
Beautiful. Excellent. Thank everyone who was watching. And what about those who may be addicted to sex?
Oh, well, here we go. Just open that door, Brother Joshua. Okay, so sex addiction, like substance use. So with addiction, you have two types of addiction. I think it's important to explain this first. So you have complex addiction that deals with substance use. And then you have processed addiction that deals with behavior. So when we look at sex and shopping and eating, we're looking at a process of behaviors that over time become habitual. And the reason why they become habitual is for the reason I just explained, is that when we engage in the activity, it brings us a lot of pleasure. So we continuously want those feelings of pleasure and feelings of reward, so to speak. And so we continue to exercise the behavior. What a person has to do who's addicted to sex is they have to look at the implications and how it's impacting other domains in their life. Because the sex addiction is very pervasive. It interferes with relationships. It interferes with job performance or school performance. It interferes with a certain level of anhedonia will set in, and that's a lack of pleasure for other things other than sex. So the sex addiction, it impacts a person's life in such a way where that becomes their main focus. And they're hypersexualized, and it's actually not listed in the Diagnostical and Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders. But what we find is the World Health Organization has categorized it as compulsive sexual disorder. So it is considered to be a disorder. So it's going to be compulsive sexual disorder. So it's going to be very important that a person intervenes and disrupts that pattern of behavior and get the help that they need. So there are experts like myself and other experts that are out there that can help people address those issues, because it does interfere with each and every domain of their life. So it's a little bit more intrusive because of the intimate connection people have. And sometimes, they want multiple partners, and we know what the most honorable Elijah Muhammad said about that. It's best just to have one wife, and Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan backed them up on that one. So they want multiple partners. What happens is, when you introduce that into the brain system, you need that sense of stimulation each and every time. And if you're into porn, then that's going to create a sense of depravity within your relationship with your mate, because at some point, a person becomes more interested in getting that instant gratification than, actually being intimately involved with their partner. So that creates, interpersonal conflict within relationships. And so we want to really, really get to, why is this person indulging in this way? And we find that people who are diagnosed with bipolar disorder have an over-sexualized sense of being, so to speak, and they will exercise needing more sex, let's just say, multiple partners, sex with strangers, long as they're getting what they want to appease that feeling of intensity and arousal, that's their end goal, and that becomes their main focus. So it's very debilitating across the board. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. How does one know if they're bipolar or not?
Well, there are a number of different symptoms that will tell you, if you're experiencing, you wake up one day and you're very euphoric, and it extends over a certain period of time, and you're able to get everything done, and you want to build the house, and you're just doing everything, and you're just really happy during this period of time, over a 2-week period of time, if you're very, very euphoric, and then say over another 2-week period of time, you're depressed and you can't get out of bed, So that would let you know that there is some bipolarism going on in terms of, just how manic a person is, or how depressed a person is.
Okay, great. What about eating addiction?
So, with anorexia, bulimia, eating disorders relate to body image. A lot of that has to do with body image. When we look at a person who has eating disorder, we can see that there are other issues also going on, normally in poor attachment styles with family, mother, authority figures, not feeling connected. So there's a lot that goes on with eating disorders, but normally that relates to body dysmorphia disorder. And that's where a person just doesn't like their body, and they look in the mirror and they could see a very heavy set person when in actuality they weigh 98 pounds. Or they feel in some way that their body has deceived them in terms of how they look. So they'll use food as a form of punishment.
See, yes, ma'am. What about, can someone be addicted to power? And if so, what advice would you give them to deal with that?
So that's where we deal with personality disorders. So if we're dealing with someone, and these are very inflexible psychological disorders. So if we're dealing with someone that has a borderline personality disorder, these people are very difficult to treat. I even had one professor tell me, Donita, if you're dealing with someone with borderline, just be agreeable, because they will turn on you and there will be nothing that you can do to help this person. So I've had much success with borderline personalities. I wonder why, but no, I have had much success with borderline personalities. So it's just about empathy and positive regard, and helping them gain some perceptionary insight into how their behavior affects other people. So for variations of reasons, be it childhood abuse and trauma, be it devastation from interpersonal relationship conflicts, be it neurological imbalancements, genetic dispositions in the brain, people will develop these personality disorders. So whether we're looking at sociopathic disorders or psychopathic or narcissistic behaviors, what we know from a brain-based perspective is that there is a part of the brain that's called the anterior insular cortex. And that is the primal part of the brain that is responsible for empathy and positive regard. And these people just don't have it. It's just not there. So a lot of times we'll look at people and say, what is wrong with them? What is wrong with her? What is wrong with him? Why don't they know what they're doing is wrong? And the answer is no, they don't. All they're looking for is instant gratification and to satisfy the ego. So there's a huge egocentric type of disposition that these people have, and all they care about are themselves. So I would caution people to be very careful when you're getting involved with someone. Again, you want to look at their mental health. And if they're exhibiting these narcissistic type of one-sided, the world evolves around me and no one else really matters, and they're never available to you, and they're emotionally detached, That's a red flag. Those are red flags that this person could be suffering from a personality disorder, and they're going to be very difficult in their relationships.
Great.
You definitely want to watch out for those people. It's difficult to say, Brother Joshua, I just got to move this just one moment.
Yes, ma'am. I thank everyone who is watching the People's Podcast.
Yeah, so you want to be really careful in dealing with those type of personalities, because they will definitely hurt your heart, hurt your soul, and have you acting out of character in such a way where there will be domestic violence, police involvement, retaliation, just a life of misery. And that's not to say, I wish I could say something different, but I can't. So just be very careful if those red flags are for you and you're noticing some of those narcissistic personalities, because that's about power and control. And there are major power struggles. And normally what happens is you attract the more narcissistic types, because you think you can fix them. And as long as I do this, then I'm able to, he'll like me or she'll like me. And it'll never happen if they have an insatiable desire that you can never please. And so you definitely want to be careful with this love bombing, this gaslighting, and all of those type of behaviors that they will inflict on you and make you think it's you, really make you think it's your fault that the relationship is going down the drain, or whatever that is. But you definitely want to be careful with these personality types that exercise their control and dominance over you in a negative way. And I know that's an oxymoron, but that's the topic that we're talking about if we're looking at that from a different perspective. You want healthy relationships. And unfortunately, with these personality types, it's very difficult to achieve.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, great. Well, thank you for this powerful information. And my sister's name says great information. Thank you. What do you do for fun, Miss Donita Lake?
Dance, music. I love helping my people in the entertainment industry. I love doing drama therapy to help people get to the core of their emotions and to really find themselves. And so my work informs my more humorous side, because a lot of times, the things that I have to deal with are so heavy in the crises that people face. And I'm actually a container, a portal to help people process their issues. So I have to come in my home and then create an environment that's harmonic for me to be able, and that's not always, because this family I live in is very dysfunctional, by the way. But ultimately, at the end of the day, dance. I love dancing.
Yes, ma'am. Well, speaking of dancing, what type of music do you like to dance to?
So a variety of different music. I will put some Nancy on, and Nancy Wilson, and just be in my moment, or definitely some Drake. I love my sons. I have 3 sons, and they all keep me youthful and inspired to do the dance, even though my oldest son always says, Mom, please don't do that at the club. He has a club, so sometimes I'll go there and support him. And I'll get up there and try to do my thing. And he's like, oh my goodness, but hip hop, I love hip hop. I love rap music. I had the opportunity when I was younger to perform with Prince Spencer and Red Fox and Curtis Blow. And we were introducing how bebop music transcended into hip hop and rap. And it was just an amazing opportunity. So I love, at first rap music sounded like a bunch of noise, and I had no idea the impact it would have on our community. But it has definitely evolved, and I just love hip hop and rap music. Believe it or not. And from Smokey Robinson and Motown sound and all of it. I could listen to some Beethoven and find myself, emerged in that as well. So, but dancing, definitely hip hop.
Excellent. And will you ever write a book on your personal life?
Well, I tell you, as it relates to the Nation of Islam, I am just so enamored by how Allah works in my life. And it was always meant for me to be a friend of the Nation of Islam. And my goal is to become a registered member. But just amazing the different nuances and different events that took place from the Black Expo back in '73 when I was standing behind Muhammad Ali and I kept nudging his butt because he was right there and he picked me up and kind of ran around the place with me on his shoulder. So that was very impactful. And my family on my father's side was part of the Nation of Islam. So I would always admire their garments and just they had something very special about them, their disposition, their demeanor, how they presented themselves, how they spoke. I knew they were different from the people at the gambling house, and they were very different from my Christian family with my foster grandmother. So they were just very different. And then my parents moved on 73rd and Crandon, and I began to go up to the playground there in the back of the mosque. And I went to a school called Bryn Mawr, the same school Michelle Obama went to. And there was a gentleman there by the name of Mr. Muhammad. So whenever Mr. Muhammad, when Mr. Muhammad came on scene, we would have to line up outside and we couldn't enter the school until we were quiet. And then once we entered the school, we had to be on every other square. And he commanded the whole school had to do this. And it was quiet, you could hear a pin drop. And I was only at Bryn Mawr a short period of time before mom and dad split, but it was so impactful. It was just so impactful. And then I started my modeling career. And one of the models was actually lived in the home over in Hyde Park. And so we would go by there and we would pick her up. And I couldn't believe that I was standing in the most honorable Elijah Muhammad's home. It was like, wow, I am actually standing here. Of course, I didn't go past the atrium, but I could look up there and see the people walking around. And it was just amazing to me. And then my mother decided to go back and get her degrees, and she went to Chicago State. She met Fatima Muhammad, and Fatima came with these 3 children one day. And I could hear my stepfather telling my mother, you can't get involved. This is bigger than you, and just leave it alone. And I could hear my mother saying, well, I'm not going to see them out. That's my friend. And those children stayed with us for a little while. And that was Brother Ishmael, Brother Ahmed, and Sister Kala. And so that is huge. That was huge for me because I didn't know who they were. And, I didn't think that would be so significant now in my life, knowing who Brother Ishmael is. And it was just significant. And my husband came in one day more recently and he said, Dee, you gotta listen to this tape because you're on that Christian stuff and that's not what this is about. We need to get to the grassroots of our people and blah, 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 blah. And I was working on my master's degree. So I'm like, okay, put it in. And I was listening, but I wasn't listening. And then when I got in my car one day, he had put the tape in my car. And it was the most honorable Elijah Muhammad saying, wherever he say go, go. Wherever he say stay from, stay from. So I rushed home and I said, okay, I got to listen to Minister Farrakhan. And I turned on the tape and Minister Farrakhan said these words. He said, sister, you can do anything a man can do, but you cannot degrade yourself. He said, you are the second self of God. You are the mother of all civilization. You are the co-creator of the universe. I had never heard nobody quite describe me like that. So I was like, I am. Wow. Okay. So from that, I said, okay, I've got to get over to the mosque. I'm going over to the mosque. I got to the parking lot. I said, brother, I want to see Minister Farrakhan. And the brother looked at me. He said, well, Sister Minister Farrakhan is not available, but why don't you come in and come to the study meeting? And I said, no, I just want to see Minister Farrakhan. And he said, okay, he'll be here Sunday. And if you want, you can come back on Sunday. So I did. I came back on Sunday and I've been coming back ever since. So from that perspective, I know that the Nation of Islam has had a huge impact on my life. And as I said, I'm just eternally grateful to Allah.
Beautiful. Praise be to Allah. And what would you like your legacy to be, ma'am?
So I would like my legacy to be that within me, Allah placed the gift of discernment, and I am so eternally grateful that I embrace that gift opposed to run from it, and I'm able to discern human behavior. And as a result of my clinical skills, along with the gifts that Allah has given me, I'm able to help a lot of people heal. So I always say I slay demons and help people get to the soul and the core of their issues. You know, um, it's not work that everyone, and you know the difference, Brother Joshua, when you're dealing with mental health issues and demonic forces. So there is a great difference in that work. And I'm just grateful that Allah has given me the purpose to be able to stand in these shoes and be able to do this work and carry the teachings with me everywhere I go. So my legacy would be that I slay demons and I help people heal.
Beautiful. Thank you. And we need more people a part of that. If somebody wants to reach out to you for your talent agents or dealing with mental health, do you have a social media they can reach out to you? Do you want them to reach out to your website or email?
Okay, so everything's kind of getting revamped because, like I said, I just kind of combined everything. It's now being combined right now. Of course, I'm on Facebook. Of course, my company is Christian, Kristin, Michael's Talent Career Center. And I also have Lake Talent Management. So if you Google any of those names, Donita Lake, that's DONITA LAKE, you will find me. You will find me. And there's always Nature's Own Wellness Center and the Site Cafe as well.
Beautiful. Well, I thank everyone for tuning into the special edition of Off the Record on the People's Podcast, and thank our guests who did a tremendous job giving us some information as well as inspiration. This is Joshua Leonard Muhammad signing off for the People's Podcast. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you.
Thank you all for watching.